Hey everyone, welcome back to Heartway Farms. Today we're going to be talking about our rotational grazing and our electric fence setups and modifications that we're doing this year. Hey guys, it's Josh with Heartway Farms and we are talking fencing today. Some may ask, why is fencing so important? What is different about your fencing? What are you doing with your fencing and why are you setting up the fencing the way that you're setting it up? We have learned a few things in the last 5 years of doing rotational grazing with the animals. And one of those things is that portable fences are great. You have our chickens on a portable net, poultry netting right here. We have a 5-wire fence that you can barely see right here, but it's here. There's 5 wires right down in the pasture here. And then we have the exterior that is a 5-wire fence as well. So our fencing on our 5-wire electrified fence is 8 inches off the ground, and it goes every 8 inches up to 40 inches. And the reason we chose to do that is because a few people, Greg Judy being one of them, who does a lot of rotational grazing, talks about the fence not being higher than 40 inches because that helps with keeping for instance, the deer jumping over it and clipping it and knocking the fence over all the time. So, and we don't have, we're trying to keep in sheep and cattle and horses. So that's why we chose that 40-inch limit on ours. Something we have learned is that rotational grazing is awesome because it helps keep the weeds down, helps regenerate the soil, helps keep the animals healthier with keeping them off of their manure and out of the pest parasite cycle, all that good stuff. But one of the drawbacks, or one of the things that you have to consider, is how far or how big of a system do you want to have that you're pulling around your pasture? Are you using a single line to keep in horses or cattle, or are you using a 4-line system or a netting system that would help with keeping like sheep in, or goats, something like that? So we have a mixture. We have sheep, we have steer, and we have horses, and then we have the chickens, and then we have the livestock guardian dogs. So when you put all that together, we needed a 4-line system or 4-wire system, and we have been using for the rotational grazing the Gallagher Smart Fence system. It's kind of like a giant fishing reel that comes off the spool, has the stakes already integrated in the lines, and those systems come, I believe the number is like 330 feet per system. Now, from experience, doing the 330 feet all the time starts to get a long distance and a little unwieldy. If you've got the space for it, that's great. We happen to have our pasture that's, I'll do a quick 360 here. It is 7 acres. So we are about 400 feet wide by 800 feet long. So with that being said, we have decided that the easiest distance for us is at about that 200 feet long to do our cross fencing. So we have installed a perimeter fence last year, and then this year we have decided to do a center pasture fencing system that is a 5-wire system, and it is permanent. And that is going to be the most fence that we install currently. Reason being is that we can basically start running the animals. We have a central water line going down here, and that's on a float bucket system that you guys have seen us put together. Then we rotate the animals section by section down the pasture space here. And that allows us to manage the space way more efficiently and without a bunch of headaches. So I am only having to come out here and pull the temporary fencing system about 200 feet. So what we do is we leapfrog them. So I'm just trying to get through the information so you understand like why we have chosen to break our pasture down into the space that we've done it. Having it only about 200 feet wide at the largest area does a couple things. It keeps us using those spools efficiently. It is just less distance to cover each time. It keeps us intentionally moving the animals more often and making them space for them. So I'll give you some examples here real quick. Here is an example of where they have been and where they have gone to. This morning they were in this space over here with the truck, our lawn ornament, and they've nipped this down pretty low. Okay, they were here an extra day because I get held over at work longer, so they were here one extra day that I didn't want to keep them here, but they were here, so that's the way it is. And then this is what they're in right now. You can see that they're standing up to their knees in some forage, and they're eating the grass happily like grazing ruminant animals do. So they are over there. The sheep, you can see their backs, they're kind of hidden in the grass because it's about that tall. It's over their backs. So they have grazes down on this side, and we've cross-fenced them in with the permanent or the temporary system here. And then it's from our permanent fence there to the center of the pasture fence right here. So this whole area on this rectangle that's over on the far side, or let's call it the west side of our property, that side of the fencing system, they're not over there right now. That land's getting rest. They've already grazed it once, and they are out of their parasite cycle. It's regenerating, and it's gaining more mass and forage as they move along. So they have this section here, and then I don't know if you can see it, but they have another temporary fence right up by that green bucket up there. So this whole chunk of the square right here is where they will eat for the next 48 hours. And after they've trampled it, after they've grazed on it, after they've eaten it, then they will get moved from there. So this is the temporary fencing systems I'm talking about, the Gallagher Smart Fence. Here's one of the posts that comes docked up in it, but it's basically a giant fishing reel down there that you just pull out and then you stake it into the ground. So that is the big reason why we have chosen to learn from our mistakes. Well, I wouldn't even say they're mistakes. Annie and I were just talking about this, is that you just live and you learn, and that you adapt and make modifications to make life just a little bit easier. So if I'm not dealing with an unwieldy 380-foot piece of fence, and I'm only dealing with a 200-foot piece of fence, which doesn't sound like a lot difference, but it is, okay? We have just condensed our operation to where 24 to 48 hours is what our target is for the space that they're left in, and this will all recover and grow back, and it does a lot for us. It keeps the weeds down, it allows new biomass to come into play. They're not running around eating different parts of the pasture that they're being picking on, so they're not just eating all clover or certain grasses. They're kind of having to forage that whole area a little more intensely. But that intensity is a short time so that they're not sitting on it too long to where they're beating it up and burning it off and getting it to the point of where it's just getting destroyed and not usable. Perfect example is you drive around to some of these pastures that have open access all the time on them, and it'll be chomped down, like nipped down to the floor, and it looks like a golf course of magnitude for how much forage there is, but that's not what your animals need. Your animals need the mixture, and they need the mass to sustain them and to use less hay and less product to feed them. So that is the purpose of what we are doing here. The 5-wire fence, the permanent installation in the certain locations that we've got going, and how we're setting those things up. So we have the perimeter fence around the entire property. We have basically a central fence going down here. And then we did go ahead and install one more central fence going east to west as well at the end of our 7-acre grazing area. And then that basically just gives us the ability to split up a north and a south pasture section on the property here. So that is the rundown on the fencing, and hopefully you will learn something as we come along to see the install in place. So that's a 36-inch bit. We'll put the extension on there. We'll drop that hole down to about 48 inches, and then we can adjust it from there. That way we're into the frost area there. And here comes William driving the trailer. He and Annie were loading up the big blue van trailer with telephone poles. All right, so what we're installing here is some H posts. What we've done is we've gotten a huge donation. A friend of ours gave us some old posts that we can repurpose, and we're simply going 48 inches off the ground, and we have about an 8-foot cross arm that sits up here, and then you make a figure 8 around these 2 posts, and you get your tension pulley set up on it. And Marie corrected me, is it's high to low, and that's because you're pulling tension on the fence this way, and you want to keep it all racked in play here. So this is going to be tension going this way, and it's going to be pulling the fence together like this. So you want that to keep these poles tensioned the right way. All right, so we got our 10-inch rods, and we just take and push those in, drive it in, and then you use another one when you're thick like this, and use it like a taproot.
So real quick, you start with the H frame. We've already talked about that. You and Will put in this cross post. Yep. What do you call a support post?
Yep.
This is kind of fun. All these have old little, you know, writing or numbers on them. Okay, so right now we're in the process of pulling the high tension wire and creating the actual fence.
Yep.
So here's a fence. I mean, it's hard to tell distance, but it's all the way down to this support down here. And this is what it looks like when it's completed. You have this piece attaching here, and this is how you ratchet it down and tighten down your tension on the, you know, fence, make it nice and tight. We still need to add some support fences all the way down, but it goes down to that H, right back there, H frame. Here's another H frame. The distance between here and here is 16 feet. That's where all of our gates are 16 feet, because we want to be able to get machinery in and out of both sides of the pasture, west side of the pasture, east side of the pasture. This piece is gonna start here, go down to where Josh is. I don't know if you guys can see him in his orange shirt down there. And it's gonna wrap around and go all the way over to that side of the property to make like an L-shaped fence for the corner of the property. So this is gonna be a long run. We're doing 5 wires, and we're gonna show you the process.
Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed some of the content, that you learned something there from that. Once again, we are not professionals. We're bootstrap farmers when it comes to homesteading. Sometimes you just have to get the project done. It's not always gonna be the prettiest as the professionals. There's a lot for us to learn, most certainly, but it's also going to be an experience that you learn from by doing it, something that you can put your hands to and say that you installed the system. But the point of it is that you can do it. We had our friends help us out with getting us access to some of these telephone poles that are repurposed. Huge help when it comes to inflation cost, trying to keep the cost on the farm down, and then just having a product that's actually going to work for us long term. When it comes to a telephone pole, is a pretty beefy piece of wood, and that it's designed to be in the ground for a long period of time. So that is what we've used, is the repurposed telephone poles. Huge shout out to our friends and neighbors here in town that we could rely on for getting this project done, because without them, yeah, I don't know if it would have gotten done right now with the cost of the lumber costs and all that good stuff. So that is huge for us to get that done. So hopefully you learned something. I know it wasn't perfect, but it was definitely an experience for us to get in place and get this system going so that we can much easier maintain the rotational grazing of the animals. So y'all have a blessed day, and we'll see you later.